Welcome to another MIT Press Live, a virtual event series brought to you by the MIT Press. My name is Jeremy Matthews. I am an acquisitions editor for the MIT Press. And this exciting book that we're talking about today, The Curie Society, is what brings us all together today. The Curie Society is written by Heather Einhorn and Adam Staffaroni, who are joining us. And others have contributed to this book. Janet Harvey is the other co-author. And joining me today is Dr. Ritu Raman, a science advisor for the Curie Society and author of a forthcoming MIT Press book, Biofabrication.
Hey, hi everybody. So happy to be here. I'm Ritu. I'm a postdoctoral fellow at MIT. I'm an engineer, and I look at how we can build medical devices that adapt to the human body and help fight disease. Improving the representation of girls and women in science is super important to me, which is why I'm so excited about the Curie Society and really looking forward to the chat today.
Yeah, me too. I think it's important for us to start by really talking about how the four of us met. I'm going to talk a little bit later about the MIT Press and our role in publishing this book. But I want to say that one of the important things that the authors and the creators of this book, Heather Einhorn and Adam Staffaroni, wanted to do is to have real scientists, real women scientists contribute. And Dr. Ritu Raman, or Ritu, was one of the people that I really thought of and introduced them to her. And we've met before, and we had a great conversation. So Heather and Adam, why don't you tell us about what you wanted to do with meeting someone like Ritu and a little bit about the genesis of the idea of the Curie Society.
Sure, yeah. Well, first of all, excited to be here, excited to be talking to all of you.
Yes, and why don't we share the story of how we came up with it, and then we can talk about Ritu and how that's a sort of integral part of everything that we put together here for the Curie Society.
Sure.
So the original thesis for the idea actually came after Adam and I went to a panel at San Diego Comic-Con, where many of the best heroic IP ideas come from. We went to a panel on female representation for STEM characters in media. The panel was really cool. It was a mixture of creative people and scientists, and just the general gist was how do we do better than what we've been doing in terms of representation in the media and why it's important. And we agreed obviously with everything they were saying on the panel, which was that we need to do more. And one of the questions that was asked at the panel was, sort of like, what's the next steps? Like, we know we need to improve in this space, and we know it's important to show young girls role models and characters that sort of embody these types of careers. So what can we do? And somebody said, oh, what would be great is if we could have like a woman who was like the head of a lab, like Q from James Bond. Like, imagine that, a woman that's a head of a lab. That'd be crazy.
Or two women in a lab instead of just one token woman in the film or TV show as a member of the lab. Imagine
that, two women, so crazy. And so, we left that panel really sort of floored because the bar was so low. Like, that was the dreams that people were having, was the dream of two women working together. And we felt that the bar was way too low. The dreams needed to be bigger. And that idea was the idea that led us to the Curie Society, which is an all-female, non-binary ensemble piece where everybody, there is multiple, more than two, many women, many female characters working together, representing different types of sciences, different types of paths to get to these careers. It was important to us to show there's different ways to get there. But yeah, that was the origin of the genesis, was to do an ensemble piece, showing women working together.
And that was the challenge that we gave ourselves after we saw that panel, because we were just talking about it as we were leaving the panel, and it was just like, well, if they're dreaming of two, can we do 3? Can we do 4? And then what's the most we can do? And the answer is just all. Just all. Whatever number of people are there in that lab are all women. And that's kind of the challenge we set for ourselves after we saw that talk was, okay, if that's the goal to do all, how do we make that as fun and engaging and exciting as possible?
I mean, why not, right?
Right. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the plot, and then I'll give the next question to Ritu.
Sure. So you can see on the cover, we have our class of new recruits to the Curie Society. So the book opens with our protagonists, Simone, Maya, and Taj, are all new first-year students at Edmonds University, a fictional university, but real in the book. And so they're incoming first years. They all wind up as roommates, and then they all receive at different times secret messages from a mysterious source with a wax seal with the letter CS on it, sealing the envelope. And their invitations, all when combined together, open a set of puzzles for them to follow in order to find where these invitations came from. So they follow the clues and they solve the puzzles and discover the Edmonds chapter of the Curie Society. And they are being invited to be the new class of recruits to the Edmonds chapter. So as the book goes on, they go through training, they go on missions, they visit other Curie Society research facilities, a mammoth de-extinction lab in Glacier Park, and they go on missions because this chapter of the Curie Society has some past history, some backstory ties to some scientific villains who are out there doing some not so great things. So then we follow the society as they try to stop the bad guys and save the day.
All right.
That's great. Actually, that kind of leads into my next question. There's a lot of really exciting science in this book. And I, as a comic book reader, I really care about content that's exciting. But as a scientist, I also really want to make sure that the science communication is informative and reasonable and accurate. So I was curious, how were you thinking about balancing accuracy and excitement? And can you tell us maybe a little about how working with MIT and MIT Press kind of played a role in making sure that the book was scientist approved?
Totally. So after we came up with the idea, there was like a choice to be made about how we were going to put this book together. And typically, Adam and I work in science fiction, and so that basically means we make it up. It's if there's a laser that shoots a beam from space, that's great. Like, we wrote it and it exists. But for this concept, we felt it was really, really important that the science be real, because we wanted to show young women the types of things that they could actually be working on. Mm-hmm. And so we got introduced to the folks at MIT, who thankfully saw the vision of this crazy concept, because we should note that this is that Curie did not actually start this. We've had a couple of different people think that this is actually, that's how real this feels, is that it actually exists. And in 1903, she did start this society. So she did it. So this fictional world that we're living in. And then we brought in, with the help of the folks at MIT and Massive, 20 different science advisors to come in and make sure that everything was scientifically accurate, and not only scientifically accurate. And this is why people like you, Ritu, is so important to speak with you, because we wanted the science to be accurate, but we also wanted the characters to be authentic to this world, mm-hmm. And not just guess about the experiences that different women have had. So yeah, that was a very special part of this book. Typically for our projects, we always do a little bit of research, but this was really like
research heavy.
Yeah. We really
mm-hmm.
wanted to strike a balance between the fictional, the entertainment, and real science. And if you read this book, you know, you'll learn a lot, but you won't even feel like it. Yeah, it just sort of is integrated in a, I think, a really wonderful way.
And our mission with the science we included was to do what we call near-term science fiction. So we were talking to all our advisors and just hearing about all the cool stuff they were working on. Ritu, you're working on like some amazing stuff. It was so cool for you to fill us in on everything. It was overwhelming, but what we tried to do was take what people were working on now and project 10, 20, 30 years in the future. Where could this technology go? Where could it evolve in the near term, realistically, or at least plausibly? So the goal was really to, our biggest hope was that we reach a young reader who winds up like being part of the team that makes something we talked about a reality.
Yeah, and I think you hit that balance really spot on. It's the kind of thing where there's so many exciting things happening in science right now. You don't really need to make it up. You can just tell the truth or what could happen in 10 years, and it is awesome and exciting.
Yeah, I mean, you know, one of the things we should mention is that Andy Weir was an endorser for the book, and it really made me think a little bit about The Martian, right? When I was listening, I listened to the audiobook, and it just felt so amazingly possible, right? And so this type of realistic science, I do see that possibly inspiring younger, you know, in aspiring scientists. So talk a little bit about the themes of the book, not just the scientific themes, but maybe the emotional, social, you know, themes that are present in this book.
Yeah, there's a lot in here. It definitely packs a punch. We wanted to give it all of the sort of gravitas of any sort of amazing comic book soap opera style story. I can touch on a couple of them. You could do too.
Sure.
So yeah, one of the main themes of this book is mentorship and female mentorship. So that was something it came up in almost all of our conversations with all the different scientists we spoke with about how important it was to have a mentor, somebody to guide you through not only the process of choosing a major or things that seem so, just like normal college activities, but just the landscape of being a woman in the sciences. So mentorship was something that was really important, and you'll see the younger characters in this book throughout the book are paired up with older characters to sort of show that. And one of the things we really wanted to do was, in case young women who are reading this book don't have those mentors in real life, it's very much this idea of see her, be her, this idea that, if you don't have the actual mentor, these characters, you can imagine it. You can imagine that Dr. Burkhardt or Dr. Warsame would be your mentor. So that was one of the main themes that we really wanted to hone in on, is the importance of mentorship.
Yeah, and just showing diversity was a huge part of it. Obviously, just doing a team of all women scientists is something that was a new concept we based things around. But beyond that, we just wanted to show characters from all different backgrounds in terms of where they come from, what their backgrounds are, what scientific disciplines they're interested in, just people from all walks of life, because the message here is not just if you're a woman, you can do science. It's if you're anyone, you can do science. If this is your passion, follow your passion. Anyone can do it. So we really wanted to make sure to, just if you're, even whatever your interests are, if you're a gamer, if you're a super serious person, if you're not a serious person, like all personality types welcome, if this is what you really want to do.
Gotcha. I love both those themes, and they resonate so strongly with me. You guys know this, but in my life, one of the main reasons I wanted to be an engineer is because my mom's an engineer, my dad's an engineer, and I grew up sort of seeing a woman in STEM who was a role model and a man who was an ally and very supportive of her role in science. And it was so exciting, but I can't help thinking that if I hadn't had that, where would I have seen it? There was no TV show, there was no book, there was no Curie Society. And that's probably the reason why there were a lot of other girls who might have had the same interests as me, but didn't end up following the same path because they didn't have it sort of in their home, just casually on display. So I love that you're extending that reach out to people who may not have that personal resource. And, you know, again, the diversity element really speaks to me a lot, because I grew up all over the world, in India and Kenya and the US. And I think it's one of those things where when you have only one female character, they can never be correct because they can never be everything. But here you don't have that problem. You have 50 different people, and there are parts of Simone that really vibe with me. There are parts of Maya that I really get. Taj, like, not so much. I like her, but she's not a lot like me, right? But that's fine. Like, somebody else is going to get that out of them. And I just think that's great. So I guess kind of along those lines, something I'm curious about is, you know, what are you hoping, what kind of impact do you want to have on young people? What do you want them to take away and like learn from this book series? And, you know, what do you think adults could take away from this as well? Because I really liked reading.
Well, the secret of any good YA action adventure, you know, story is that it should appeal to, you know, we always want the kids to be super, super excited, and for them, exactly what you're saying, to see pieces of themselves in the characters.
Mhm.
And that's why the ensemble piece was so important, because to your point, like in most ensemble pieces, there is only one girl, and then they give her one trait. Like, she's the smart one, or
Right.
she's the dumb one, or whatever, you know, that's it. Like, so,
Mhm.
you know, that was super critical to us, exactly what you just articulated about being able to see pieces of yourselves in these characters. Hugely, hugely important to us.
Right,
Yeah.
right. When there's only one character, just being the smart one becomes their sole character trait. So part of what we loved about meeting you and all the other scientists that we talked to was just getting to know them as people, just getting to hear what their interests were, what their personalities were like, because we were looking for those unexpected details, you know, things you wouldn't assume, because part of the thing that we had to learn too, because the representations in media are so limited, how do we learn about what real scientists are like, and make sure those are reflected in the personalities of our characters? And so that was just a wonderful part of the whole process, was just listening for those really fun, you know, unexpected details, and being like, oh wow, that's cool. Let's make Taj you know, do something like that. Let's give that to Maya. And it was just a blast getting to you know, pull all of that into the personalities we were building.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that's what makes them really pop. You know, they're very multidimensional. So could you maybe walk us through, you know, one character or couple, talk about what are some specific things that you took away from a scientist that you met that you helped you sort of model that character?
Well, we met this great scientist. Her name was Ritu. No, the conversation with you is actually a super critical one. I would love if you could share the story about the scarf, because one of the themes of this book is also sort of overcoming adversity, and this idea of the external pressures that are put upon you by the outside world, and just how you as a woman, how you internalize what's happening around you, and then not looking at things as though this is a failure, this is a success, trying to sort of get out of your own head and, you know, move forward with what you're passionate about. And I thought that the conversation with you was like super duper awesome. So maybe you could share.
I'm glad the ring light is hiding my blushing, but I did wear the scarf because I assumed that we would talk about it. But yeah, so the story behind this scarf is that there is a company that, you know, usually puts like books, like all the words in a book on top of a scarf. And they had this special Kickstarter campaign right around the time I was finishing my PhD. They were like, any text that you have a copyright over, we'll put it on a scarf for you. So it was just when I was writing my, you know, several 100-page dissertation. So everything I had done in my PhD. So I was like, here, I just wrote a thing. It's like tens of thousands of words, take it. They put it on a scarf. I was very excited, right? Because it just seemed like something fun to do for myself. I got myself a gift because I got a PhD and I was proud of it. And every girl that I told was like, that is so exciting and fashionable and like amazing. They were all here for it. And then I wore it one day to the first day of my new job at MIT. And there were some of my male peers that were in office that I was working with. They asked me what it was, and I told them, and they actually had a weirdly negative response to it. Like I was almost like, how could you be so kind of full of yourself that you would put your PhD on a scarf and wear it, that sort of thing. And I was just like, it was so odd to me. And I had spent a good amount of money on the scarf and then just didn't wear it again for a few years because I felt so embarrassed. And then it took me a while of really interrogating that and thinking about, is it so wrong for a girl to just be proud of something she's done? I wasn't rubbing it in anybody's face. I was just saying, like, I'm really proud of this accomplishment and I'm happy. And I was like, you know what? I am going to start wearing it again. I've had similar sort of pushback on other things, like changing my Twitter handles to saying Dr. Ritu Raman. And people are like, why'd you put doctor? I'm like, because that's literally, that's my title. I'm not trying to be a jerk, but you would never ask a man those things. So I think that's something that I've learned to, just ask people back, like, why are you pushing back on, somebody being proud of their accomplishments? And usually when you do that, you'll find that a lot of people don't really have an answer. And I will say on the positive side of this is that a lot of those men, I think, really have changed their viewpoints because, we are peers, we work together, and they're like, oh, I understand why, people don't always recognize that you're a doctor or a person with authority in this room. And so sometimes you have to like make that very obvious. So you're not going to change everybody. But the one thing that I hope to do is kind of show girls that it's okay to be proud of your accomplishments. It doesn't mean that you're arrogant or full of yourself. And I certainly saw some aspects of that in the characters, especially in Maya, because she's kind of like a fashion icon, like me, like my scarf.
Well, you know what? As a father of 3 girls and as a human being, I'm glad that the narrative is changing. And I'm hoping that this book and people like Dr. Ritu Raman are changing the narrative. And I wanted to show everyone, there's a section in the back, scientists' biographies of the dozens of women who contributed to this book. And if you could go to thecuriesociety.com, you will also learn about many others who contributed to this book, many of them women. Or maybe most of them women, right?
Most.
So we've got a lot.
It's
We got
important
to
to have the men's support as well. That was also a great point. Is that
Yeah.
we need buy-in from everybody to
Right.
change the culture for sure. So I think that this is all awesome.
Yeah. So I want to touch on 2 things before we take questions. One is very exciting news. If those who just discovered this book don't know by now, we are actually going to do a volume 2 and a volume 3. So those have been inked and signed, and we're looking forward to them soon as possible. So keep keep your eyes open for that. Follow Curie Society and Heather and Adam on social, and I'm sure you'll get updates about that there. So maybe give us a little bit of a teaser for volume 2, Heather.
Oh, well, I won't spoil too much, but there's a big cliffhanger. As with any good graphic novel, there's a big cliffhanger at the end of volume 1 that introduces some new players in the game here, and there is a potentially a society that is out there that is, we'll say their intentions are not as noble as the intentions of the members of the Curie Society. So we'll see how that all plays out, but it is going to be more action, bigger, more exciting, explosions, all of the fun stuff you'd expect in a sequel. And it's going to continue to be this fun mystery spy thriller genre world that we've built. And we're going to learn more about the Curie Society itself because it's still a bit of a mystery. So there'll be more layers peeled back on the society itself as well.
We'll visit some new chapters, meet some new Curie members, and maybe dig in a little more into the history of the Curie Society.
So much more to learn, so much more to explore. So we're very excited. We're gonna invite everyone to drop a question in the Q&A, and please feel free to ask the question of Heather, Adam, or even Ritu, and we'll do our best to answer your questions. But I think this has been really, really exciting. And we really can't wait to continue the conversation online and offline. And hopefully we start seeing more and more people with copies of the book for their children, for themselves, reading the book and asking questions. So I think I have a question from one of my colleagues. So Hannah, would you like to ask your question now? Or is it in the Q&A?
It is in the chat.
It's in the chat. Okay.
What was your favorite part of the
Yeah.
behind the scenes creation of the Curie Society?
Ooh, okay. Well, for this book, I would say the collaboration between the creative folks on the comic book side and all of the real life members of the Curie Society, like Ritu, the combination of those two groups of people working together, which was, inspired by that original panel that we went to of just seeing all these different sort of interdisciplinary people using different skill sets to tell an amazing story. So definitely that's very unique to this project, to have such a high level of collaboration between those groups. And I think it's very Curie to have it be super interdisciplinary. So I feel like we have a nod to her in the way that we sort of put it all together. But that was my favorite.
Yeah. It's rare to have the opportunity to actually put so much research and get so many people involved in a graphic novel like this. So we were just really thrilled that we had the time and the help from Massive and the help from MIT to find all these amazing women scientists to talk to and incorporate their experiences and their personalities and their work into what we were building.
Great. So we've got a question. Even though the emphasis is on females in STEM in the book, are there also male characters in the storyline?
There
Yes.
are. It's limited. There's a limited number of male characters in the storyline. There's also non-binary characters in the story as well, because it was important to us to have that level of representation. But yes, there are male characters in the story.
Let me just follow up on that. I mean, people, obviously, it's easy for people to think and watch maybe graphic novels from decades ago where it was mostly male, and no one really thought about, this seems odd. Do you ever think to yourself, what if people think it's odd to have a mostly female, cast?
Oh, I think based on what we've seen out there in the media, which is there is really nothing like this that is out there. I think this is going to be shocking to people to see a group of multi-dimensional women working together. And the shocking part is that's shocking. So hopefully we will change that with this book. That is one of the main goals, is to sort of it shouldn't be a big deal to have multiple women working together. So this
Right.
book will hopefully make it not a big deal, if that makes sense.
What some people see as odd is just new and exciting and fun to other people. So if it feels odd to you, then hey, that means that this is, even if this is a new viewpoint, this is something you haven't read before. So go for it, check out the story, and maybe at the end it won't seem so odd.
It's amazing how many women are in STEM, and as you said, the media is not showing them. I studied science as well. My advisors were all women, so they exist, and so this is really good. And Ritu will tell you they exist at all levels in science. So, next question is this book written from one point of view or multiple points of view?
That's a great question. This is an ensemble piece, so there'll be different parts of the book that will be from different characters' points of view. So you'll get sections of the book that more focus on Simone, more focus on Maya, focus on Dr. Burkhart. We have some really cool flashback sequences, so you can see what the Curie Society looked like in the 80s. There's different outfits. It's super fun. But yeah, this is definitely a multiple viewpoint storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I love the flashbacks. I just want to say they're great.
So Ritu, do you want to ask a question before I go to the next audience question?
Sure. I mean, I was really curious, were there any parts of the technical parts of the book, either a specific piece of technology or maybe some of the bioethics stuff that you were writing about that were particularly challenging for you?
Yes.
Yes.
All of it. I mean, we really pushed ourselves to dive into subjects that we, weren't really familiar with, because it was also the stuff that was like the coolest and most interesting coming to it from a sci-fi perspective. Because I always love, in sci-fi, like learning about something I never heard of before and doing it through the lens of a story. It just makes it more fun that way. So we really challenged ourselves to go after like scientific concepts that we didn't entirely grasp, and that we then got to learn about through the process of making the book. So the CRISPR stuff, that was really interesting. That was really new. The ethics surrounding it. It took a while to kind of break down. Okay, how do we get that across in a story without being able to just like kind of write a bunch of text about it. So yeah, we really pushed ourselves into towards the stuff that seemed the most fantastical, because that was the coolest in the sense of it seems like fantasy, but it's real.
Well, that was one of the fun challenges too. And thank goodness we recorded a lot of the conversations with a lot of the amazing scientists we spoke with, because it's just, that's just so incredible. Like the level of complication and complexity and the problem solving that's happening is incredible. And so it really was a fun challenge to distill it down to a way that it was able to be absorbed by younger readers and for adults to enjoy as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it was actually conversations with Jeremy. We were talking about science ethics, and when you talk about that as a topic, it sounds pretty dry, but when you pull back and you look at the history of comic books, you have, with X-Men, you have Professor X and Magneto and the social issues and the sort of complexity of those conversations. Mm-hmm. And we really wanted to pull from that when talking about, how does the Curie Society view science at, like, what is their point of view on how that should work versus, so Curie Society is like a more older and historical way of thinking versus these new tech companies that sort of like this move fast, break things and just sort of figure it out later. And we were really attracted to that as sort of like what are the implications of when science moves so fast that the laws can't keep up. That was just like a light bulb went off, and just all these different plot points and stories that could come from that. So we really wanted to sort of live in the science ethics world, but make it still action adventure and fun and exciting. So it was a fun challenge for sure.
Oh, that's great. We've got some great questions coming in. Thank you for your questions. I wanted to point out one of my other favorite parts of the book. There's a glossary section because Adam mentioned the word CRISPR. So if you want to know what that is, there's a glossary section that talks a lot about the real and realistic science that's in the book. And it's not boring at all. You'll learn a lot. The other question we have here is for Heather and Adam. Is the book all encompassing when it comes to the audience, or is it more specific? And also, is the book a motivating piece to be included as part of a course in schools?
Yes, so we've produced some educational resources, which you can find at thecuriesociety.com. And as Jeremy just pointed out, there's a glossary as well. So yes, this is definitely meant to be, just as I mentioned with the science ethics, this is meant to be a jumping off point, start conversations, talk about the characters. You can agree with what the society is doing, or you can disagree. You can say, I actually go with the tech people. I think move fast and break things or whatever. It's open for debate. And I think having conversations and debates is such an important part of the scientific process. So it's inherent to the world of the book.
Yeah, we hope our readers have different opinions and want to talk about it with each other and bring different viewpoints and just spur discussion. So yeah, that's really what we want to try to do is, give the readers launching off points to explore more, show them the fun and exciting angle of this stuff, and inspire them to then go do their own research and find out more on their own.
I want to bring in Ritu on this question because Ritu's book that's coming also touches on issues of ethics. So Ritu, what is the discussion that's happening in the research circles about these things? Because that's a really important theme in the Curious Society.
Yeah, I think ethics has always been a big part of science and engineering because every time you make some sort of new technology and you're like, look, it can be used for all this good. You can use it to do MRIs and diagnose people. And they're like, well, also there's this one part of this research that could be used to make new weapons. And you can say that about pretty much everything. And so then you have to think about, how do I mitigate the potential negative consequences of the work and not. And I think, a lot of what this book touches on, whether it's CRISPR gene editing, or in my book, I talk about, building robots with living materials. Whenever biology comes into play, there's a whole other part of ethics that comes in, this social, moral, religious ethics that permeates other parts of our culture. And we start saying, oh, are we playing God? Or if we're building something with living materials, does that mean it's alive? What does it mean to be alive? And so I think when you're writing about that, it just becomes this very complex thing and contentious thing. And it's really important, I think, for us as science communicators to think about, how do we talk about this in a way that incorporates a lot of viewpoints and not necessarily dismiss someone out of hand just because they have a different view of what life is than we might.
Great. So I want to combine the next two questions. Basically, the questions are, would this book appeal to teen or tween males as well as females? And what's the youngest age that would you recommend for this book?
Sure. Yeah, it's
definitely teen and tween males, and if anybody saw the box office for Wonder Woman, when the first Wonder Woman movie came out, I always like to use that as an example, that there is a mixture of both young men and young women, teens and tweens, that are excited about that character. And this is the same. This is, if you like Black Widow, if you like any of those awesome badass Marvel women, you're gonna love this book.
And anyone who's interested in the kind of sci-fi that we're doing, and the fact that this is all based off real stuff, doesn't matter what the reader's gender is. If they're interested in that kind of sci-fi, they're gonna really be into the book. And as far as age, it's YA, but really we've already got feedback from friends and family that they have much younger readers who are super into the book and really enjoying it. So if you have a kid who's interested in science, it's really, if they're old enough to be able to read the words, the book is going to be great for them. And they might need some help understanding some of the scientific concepts. But if they're really interested in science, they're going to just, eat this up and be so engaged and so excited about even the parts they don't understand. And that's really when I was younger and read books like this, it was always just as exciting to come on stuff I didn't understand, because that meant, I could read it again and try to learn more, and read it again and try to learn more. So if you have a kid who's really into this type of stuff, then it doesn't really matter how old they are. They're gonna have a fun time with it.
But I should
that are also feeling like they're children, for sure.
Yeah.
I should also point out that even if they're not very into science. My teen daughter is not much into science, and she loved the book. She read it and she loved it. I mean, the characters are really compelling. And that's one of the things that when I brought the book and we were putting it through the production cycle, people were expecting maybe all science, but they were shocked to find so much character in the book. So I think any book lover who's into character is gonna love this book, even if they don't love science.
Yeah, and there's so many amazing organizations out there that are working at getting young people engaged with science and young women engaged with science. But it's almost always from a much drier perspective. We wanted to bring to the table something that was unique to us and making it just fun and enjoyable. And we want to build an emotional we want the readers to have an emotional connection with these characters. And a lot of what Heather was saying about the mentorship, when it's all hypothetical, it's sometimes harder to wrap your head around. But if you like really get a feel for these characters as people in the book, it just seems more real in a way. So we were hoping to fill that gap that maybe some of those other organizations just don't approach it from that angle.
And I would say also on just like the heroic level, a lot of the characters we see in the media have like, magic lassos and powers and lightning bolts and that's why with this book, the heroes are just people who are extraordinary people like Ritu. So, this is really showcasing who we are as humanity in a way that it should hopefully inspire the next generation of young people. Like, you can be the hero in a way that is a little bit different from the way you'd see typical comic book characters, because there's a level of that's just, I wish I had a magic lasso, but I don't. So that we really wanted to make that a part of this as well. It's just inspiring the next generation of young people to sort of recalibrate what really is a hero and to show that these people are real and that they exist.
Yeah, the one part I will say really quick that really drives me on that is that I think kids know when you're giving them bran flakes or Lucky Charms, right? And so like when something is going to be educational, like, I could see that coming a mile away. I had books given to me like that all the time that I hated. And this is straight up fun. And I don't think I'm saying that just because I'm a scientist, because I'm also a comic book reader. So I really do think it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So we have a question from an educator, I presume. The person asked, do you plan to have book club questions, content online for young readers? Things such as secret codes, messages, maybe research prompts. How can educators take this further? That's the question.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, the first step is definitely the material. So go check out the website because it's really comprehensive and it'll help wrap all of the themes that we were talking about with the book so you can talk about it in class. I would say read the book again because you might have missed there are some secret clues already in there. So definitely check it out. The sort of spy thriller component is with the puzzles and like we talked about with Andy Weir and The Martian. It was such a fun part of this was creating those puzzles. So that is very much a part of the Curie world. And yes, this is just scratching the surface right now, but it's all in there.
Great. Ritu, do you have a question?
Sure. Yeah. One thing that I think is really exciting about this book, and maybe it can kind of incorporate this audience question about the book being funny. Could you talk? I think there's a lot of great, funny, amusing elements to it, but I'd also be curious if you could comment on the times where you engineered conflict between the characters and how that led to their character progression.
Oh my God, that is such a good question because typically in a female ensemble piece, the conflict is around fighting over a boy. And so we definitely, with any team coming together, we obviously wanted to show that there's different personalities and part of the, scientific process also is working with people with different personalities and different skill sets. And sort of, we wanted to make sure that came to life in a way that was authentic. But yeah, conflict and conflict resolution, which is something that women often have a difficult time with, is a big part of this book, and understanding, even this idea of leadership and what it means to be a woman and a leader and how you balance all that together is definitely a big part of this book. But yeah, definitely wanting to make sure the conflict was around science and science ethics and research and leadership and not around boys. Yeah.
Yes, and it passes the Bechdel test, which is named after a wonderful cartoonist that I'm a huge fan of. Yeah, absolutely passes the Bechdel test from the get-go. And that was, we wanted to make sure that these characters felt real, and they're freshman roommates. So conflict is gonna happen. This is people from very different backgrounds all coming together and being forced to live in a small dorm room together. So conflict is only natural. So we wanted to make sure that you know, that we stayed true to what would happen in real life, in with these three personality types coming together, and also, you know, find the humor in it, because, you know, looking back on myself as a young college student, I can't help but laugh at a lot of the choices I made. So this was, you know, being able to look on these characters from the distance I have now. You find the humor in things that you went through too.
Yeah. No, I totally see that. For me, where I got a lot of the humor in the book is the characters are so different, and sometimes you're seeing it from different points of view, right? And so like Maya will do such a typically Maya thing, and you can kind of tell that Taj is like rolling her eyes and you're like, ugh, like that girl, you know, like she's so crazy. But I love that, because I think it would be ridiculous if they were just like, oh my gosh, we're sisters and we get along all the time. But you also don't want them to be arguing about something silly and vapid. And this really, you know, I think captured a lot of ways that I've had interactions with other women in STEM, where there are people where I'm like, oh my gosh, we're besties from day one. Some people that I just don't like all that much, but I still think they're great scientists and support their careers. And like, you know, when you have, again, all of these characters, you can capture that dimensionality, which you can't otherwise.
Yep. So this next question is an interesting one, and I want Ritu to touch on it as well as Adam and Heather. So this person asks, has the book addressed the gulf that exists between the perceived research world and the real one? Because what happens with some people is they get a sense of weirdness, they get deep into a field of study and can't reverse their decisions. So I guess they're asking about how deep do the characters get into their research, and yeah. So what's your reaction to that question in terms of what's in the book?
So these characters are freshmen, so they are just on the road to figuring out who they are and what they want to do and what they want to major in. So they're a little bit earlier on in the process. But I would say that a large part of this book also talks about the different paths you can take. You know, so Taj is a DJ, and she, you know, uses her skills in music to inform her engineering. So part of this book is this idea that first, that you can take different paths to get there. There's not one clear, like, this is the steps you have to take to get to the end point. So I would say that we sort of opened the door to it. But yes, these are the characters are freshmen, so they're still figuring it out. They're still figuring it out, I would say, for the characters in this story.
And we met when we visited MIT. This was a couple. Luckily, we got it in pre-pandemic by a month or two. But we got to Jeremy. You connected us with Dr. Angela Belcher.
That's right.
And we got to talk to her. What was amazing about talking to her was she had a really non-traditional undergrad experience. Really with her kind of course of study that she kind of designed herself, and it was really creatively driven. And there's other ones of our advisors that we spoke to, like Dan B. Kim, who does a lot of has a lot of artistic endeavors mixed in with her scientific endeavors. So we were really inspired by the scientists who really traveled non-traditional paths, especially in their undergraduate education, but still were, you know, able to pursue, you know, down the road their graduate studies, you know, experience all those different things as an undergrad, so they didn't feel like they had to make that decision, you know, immediately their freshman year.
So yeah, Ritu, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll just come in really quickly. You know, kind of this deception, the concept of a perceived research world and a real one. One of the things that I never liked about usual portrayals of science on TV is that they will know everything about every science. They know about DNA, they know about geology, they know just everything about everything. And I've never met a scientist like that. And when you have that kind of character, it's very inaccessible and terrifying, especially if you're a teenage girl, because you're like, well, I'm not that smart, when the real answer is nobody is that smart. Nobody knows all those things. So even though, these characters are freshmen, you do see that, Maya is a little bit more mathy and Simone gets life sciences and biology a little bit easier. And so then when they all contribute, they can answer a problem that neither of them could have alone. And that's 100% how science works. So that, I think, is a really great aspect of the book.
Yeah, we have a line in the book, something like about Simone trying to learn something that was outside of her comfort zone. And the lesson was that, in order to come up with new creative solutions that no one ever thought of before to a certain problem, you have to have new and different inputs. You have to look at different things and absorb different subject matter and allow yourself to not be so confined to a narrow course of study. And it really can open, because we talk about creativity in what we do, but so much creativity goes into science. And that's something that we wanted to get across too, that science is not just a by the numbers discipline. Creativity plays a huge part in it.
Yes.
I love that. That's a huge misconception. I think that people think that, some of the best scientists I know are also great writers and artists and musicians because they have to be creative as part of their scientific work too. And I'm amazed that people don't get that, but I'm glad that you do.
Someone asked something that maybe will give away a little bit about for the future books, but they want to know, is there science that you couldn't fit into this book that you can't wait to include in the next volumes? And if not, is there anything new in science that you've learned in prep for the book? So what can you tell us that doesn't give away the plot?
Well, the Curie Society is always going to be years into they have always got the next gen tech. So, there was definitely some stuff on we'll call it the cutting room floor of this book, but I won't give it away too much. I don't know, Adam, if you want.
Well, no,
spoiler.
But we're also gonna reset a little bit as we get into the next books and look for new stuff, because there's stuff we put in this book that we thought was 20 years away, and then we just saw like LinkedIn postings of people looking for applicants to a Mammoth De-Extinction Lab. So stuff that we thought was far in the future is way closer than we could wrap our heads around. And so, there's going to be all new stuff by the time, we don't want to stay locked into the research we did, a couple years ago for this book and informing the new book. So we'll be resetting and looking for what are the newest most interesting things that the scientific community is debating now, getting into debating the ethics of, where are the disagreements, and let's find those kind of hot topics and put them into the next book.
Well, let me follow up on that, because I came across this weird theory that DC Comics is mostly chemistry based and Marvel Comics is more physics based. So with the Curie Society, does it lean more to science, technology, or engineering, or math, or you plan to have a mixture?
Definitely a mixture. Definitely a mixture. We're not going to go DC on it. That's gotten too dark. That's gotten too dark. We're going to be tonally closer to a Marvel tone. There's definitely humor. It's, group conflict, all that fun stuff. We're not going to do a lone vigilante Batman doing something in the Batcave by himself. Yeah.
But the fans always find stuff that you didn't necessarily have in mind. They'll see things that you didn't see when you put it into the book. So we welcome the fan debate, and we'd love for the fans to tell us where they think we fall on the spectrum between physics and chemistry.
Yeah.
And biology. I feel like the thing with DC and Marvel is that they play fast and loose with biology all the time. So it's like, oh yeah, there's this gas, and then I don't know, your DNA is altered. But here, some real biology.
Yeah, I'm missing X-Men and the mutants and all of that.
Yeah, we're trying to include it all, but let the fans deliver the verdict online.
Yeah, and Hannah, our colleague, mentioned AI. that's really, as you said,
Yep.
we're much closer to Jarvis than ever.
Yeah,
Oh
absolutely.
my gosh. Yes, definitely. That's, I mean, like Adam said, the advancements, we're gonna have to do a whole new round of research. It's gonna be awesome, but the advancements are totally there. And everything that's in this book is hot right now. And the next
Mhm.
gen stuff will be even cooler because everyone's always working together, coming up with new fun stuff. That's the fun of the Curie Society, is that it's always going to be the next thing and what's happening and all those fun topics to talk through. So
Yeah.
whatever the next thing is, we'll be there.
And the pace of scientific development is so fast. There'll always be new fun stuff to include. So we'll keep it going as long as the fans want us to, and there's new stuff to include, which there always will be.
Yeah.
Well, I don't see any more questions, and we're almost out of time. So I just really want to thank everyone for joining us. Ritu, thank you so much for co-hosting.
Of course, very
Yes.
happy to be here and talk to you all again. This is so
And
exciting.
yeah, and Heather and Adam, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for
Awesome.
having us.
Thanks. This was awesome.
Yes, and go to the MIT Press website and the CurieSociety.com. And if you don't have a copy, pick up a copy, enjoy the book, and we'll see you at the next MIT Press Live. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank
Yay.
you.
Bye.
Bye.